Heyo adventurers, my name is Derek. I'm in the process of writing my own TTRPG game. I said in my first of these TTRPG design videos that my interest is to create a game that's procedure heavy. I didn't go into what that means in the first video, but that's what I'm going to do now. The first thing we have to do is separate two different concepts. One is rules and the other one is procedures. And a game could be rules light or rules heavy, but also procedure light or procedure heavy, and it's not the same thing. A rule is a piece of text in a book, something you can refer to, that tells you what something does or how something works. It tells you how to use it. It gives you some context. For example, armor class. Armor class is a number that you use in combat in most tactical games like D&D. And usually you make some form of to-hit roll. If you achieve the number, sometimes you have to go over, sometimes you have to go under, but if you do it how the book tells you, your attack hits and then you do damage. Another example, maybe you choose an elf as your ancestry. And in most games, elves are Fae. So there's going to be a line around there that says that elves count as Fae, and that gives them, in most cases, resistance against charm effects or spells of that nature. It doesn't tell you how to play, it tells you the meanings of some things. You could say that each spell is a rule, although they do refer to other rules. In games that have feats or talents or traits, each one of those, each paragraph that defines a feat or talent is a rule in itself, though they also often refer to other rules. For example, in D&D 5e, if you have the polearm master feat, it tells you what you can do with those attack of opportunities when you have some kind of weapon, but that's also a reference to another rule, the attack of opportunity, or the rules for movement, but it doesn't tell you how to play. It tells you the meanings of things. So that's a rule. Now, what is a procedure? A procedure is a set of rules that actually tell you how to play. They tell you how to do something in the game. It's a set, it's usually a list of things you have to do in a particular order so that you can achieve something. The easiest example in a game that we have all played, like D&D, is when combat starts, we know we have to roll initiative. And somewhere in the book, it says that for each player or combatant and each monster, you have to roll a d20 plus dexterity and proficiency, and then you get all those numbers and order and make a list of characters and monsters in order so that we know who's going to attack first and who's going to attack last. And you have to do it in that order, in that way, so we know we can start the battle. And then when the battle starts, the instructions tell you whoever rolled the highest, they get the first turn, and they get so many actions, they get so many whatever until their turn ends. When their turn ends, then you go to the next one on the list, and now they have a turn, and then you go on until you finish the list, and when the last person goes, we go up the list, and we continue that process until the battle is over. And usually the battle is over when either side has no more hit points, or becomes demoralized, or flees, or whatever. That's a procedure. And in a game like D&D 5e, the procedure is very well codified. It's easy to follow, it's kinda slow, but it has a semi-rigid set of rules that you have to follow step by step so that the battle has some semblance of order. By the way, if you like this content, this is a very small channel, I would take your subscription, a comment, a like. Maybe you can check up our Patreon page. I'll take all the engagement I can get. Okay, back to this. I was reading this blog post from 2022. This is from the Prismatic Wasteland blog that talks exactly about this. And this blog post, in the first paragraph of this blog post, it reads, quote, "Procedure is definitely a popular buzzword tossed around in some design circles, particularly among some of those designers emerging from the wreckage of the OSR movement. But it is more than just a flashy tagline. It is a core but often invisible structure that nearly all games have in one form or another. Procedures are often taken for granted, but giving them their due attention is useful for veteran players and referees and downright enlightening for beginners." That link for the invisible structure is actually a hyperlink to a different blog post that says the basic procedure of the OSR. In this blog post, the author attempts to distill the whole of the OSR style of play into a single set of rules, a procedure that he lays out in 5 steps. And this is the basic OSR procedure. Step 1. The referee describes the situation, what the player characters see, hear, smell, taste, or feel. Step 2. The players ask clarifying questions about the situation if they so desire. Step 3. The referee answers any such questions that are immediately observable by the player characters. If ascertaining the answer would require player character action, the referee informs the players what they must do to obtain the answer and resolves such actions if the players wish to do so. Upon the resolution of such actions, the referee answers the questions and gives any other pertinent information. Step 4. Based on the information at hand, the players state what actions their player characters take. And last, Step 5. The referee and players resolve all such actions if the situation changes, which it almost certainly will. Repeat these steps. And then it says, this ad infinitum is how most OSR games operate. Personally, I would venture to say this is not just how you would play an OSR game. Most TTRPG games, if you distill the whole style of play to a small series of instructions, I think it would be this. For most games, most game styles, it's like the basic role-playing game procedure. Back to the first blog post. Later, the author attempts to make a definition of this. Quote, procedures are a type of rule that provides the order of operation, which order typically repeats for a game and works to structure play. Again, the author continues by saying, that is my synthesized, authoritative, and final definition of a procedure in the context of TTRPGs. So to recap, a procedure is a set of rules that tells you how to play, how to do something. Now back to D&D. D&D has a very robust system for running tactical battles. It actually tells you how to do it, in what order, how to follow the whole procedure from finish to end so you have a tactical fight. Regardless of my or your qualms against the D&D 5e system and how battles may be too long sometimes, they do have a robust procedure for them. However, when you explore other parts of D&D 5e, you find that it's full of rules. There's a lot of rules, it's rules heavy, but there are not many procedures for things that you would think should be part of the game. For example, if you want to travel from one city to the dungeon or between cities, point A, point B, you need to travel. The characters need to travel. The book has a lot of stuff about that. They tell you how many miles you can walk in a day. They tell you whether you can walk faster or if you use horses. They tell you a lot of things. There's some random tables, but there is no procedure. Never in the book is there a list of things that you have to do in order so that you get from point A to point B. There is no procedure for that. Some games have tried that, and I like that. For example, in the One Ring RPG by Free League Publishing, they do have a procedure for traveling. And you would think that makes sense, right? Because it's based on the Lord of the Rings, and a big part of Frodo's journey is just that, just moving from one place to another. There's another game I recently read that does have a travel procedure. That's Ryutama. It's a Japanese role-playing game. It's like very cutesy and all, but it does have a step-by-step daily procedure for travel. Personally, I found it cumbersome because you have to do it every day, and I don't think it provides meaningful choices for the characters. It's just some stuff they have to do and they just have to, but at least they tried. It's a way to codify travel into a step-by-step procedure. Some games also have a very intricate exploring rule sets for hex scroll maps, like when you're doing overland travel and you go hex by hex, and there is a step-by-step way to do it. Here at Elven Tower, we tried that once a few years ago in a product called the Bruchisian Duchy. It's an OSR system-neutral exploration of a large region, and a lot of the hexes are fleshed out with lots of dungeons and adventures, and there is a simple but step-by-step procedure for exploring from one hex to another. The hex scroll procedure in that book is heavily inspired by the Neverland RPG book. But what about exploring dungeons? This is where I just don't get D&D. D&D, I mean, it has it in the name. It's Dungeons and Dragons. And we know that all published adventures do have dungeons. It's a big part of the trademark. But when you go into a dungeon and want to explore it, there's a lot of rules. Rules about lock-picking doors and perception checks and when to find monsters and hiding and stealth. There's lots of rules, but no procedure. If you want to explore a room or go room by room, dungeon crawling, as they say, the book doesn't tell you how to do it. Now let me point you at an easy, low-hanging fruit example of a system that actually tries to do it. This is the book for Old School Essentials, which is a recreation of BX-D&D. I mean, this was D&D back in the day. They did have a procedure for exploring a dungeon. So in this game, as in many OSR games, time is divided in discrete amounts. And here they just call it a turn. And if you see here in the green box, it tells you the procedure. It says, quote, sequence of play per turn. 1. Wandering monsters. The referee makes checks as applicable. This is in case there are random encounters or random events in the dungeon. Number 2. Actions. The party decides what actions to take. Examples: moving, searching, listening, entering rooms. This is where they ask the questions, get feedback, and maybe make some checks. Number 3. Description. The referee describes what happens. If monsters are encountered, follow the procedure described for encounters in page 124. And then 4. End of turn. The referee updates time records with special attention to light sources, spell durations, and the party's need to rest. This is admittedly a not very rules-heavy procedure. It's a very simple procedure, but it gives you a step-by-step list of things you have to do every turn. The turn is assumed to be somewhere around from 5 to 10 minutes in the dungeon. Now, as you saw there was a reference for page 124 if there's a monster. Here is where we find something that's more similar to what we see in D&D 5e. Encounter sequence. First, referee rolls for surprise. Then you find the encounter distance. You roll initiative, then step 4, actions. This is the actual fight and conclusion. Personally, perhaps it is the way I see things. I like procedures. I like the book telling me you have to do this, and this in this order to resolve the dungeon exploration or the fight or searching a room or lockpicking a door or whatever. So frustrated with 5e, but already familiar with the options that existed in other OSR games is when I decided to create this. Dungeon Crawling with Style, which is on sale at the DM's Guild. Now, admittedly, this is a very early attempt of mine at creating a rule set. With this short supplement, I attempt to solve the problem of the lack of procedures for dungeon explorations in D&D 5e. I start with a disclaimer that a lot of stuff has to change because D&D is really not prepared for this. And then I introduce this bulk system, which is an inventory slot system similar to what you see in Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And then the dungeon exploration rules, where I outline something very similar to what we just saw in Old School Essentials, but I also add an overloaded encounter die, tables for special dungeon effects that can happen, and also rules for tracking light sources. At the very end, I have this dungeon turn tracking sheet that allows a player or the GM to track the dungeon turns one by one, but also to track light sources like torches, candles, and lanterns. And there's also this special sheet where you can track your inventory with the system that's implemented in this small rule set and what happens when you are over encumbered and stuff like that. It was not my intention to make an ad of that product because that was made 5 years ago. If I were to do it today, I would probably make a lot of changes. I guess I just wanted to show you because it's an early example of my frustration for the lack of procedures in D&D to solve one thing or another. So the game I want to create, at least this is the vision in my mind right now, it's going to be not rules light nor rules heavy, probably in the middle. It's probably just going to be based on not having that much math, not having to do addition, just like a dice pool and you just count the successes, which is very easy to do. But I want to emphasize step-by-step procedures for pretty much everything that comes to mind. I want to have dungeon crawling procedures, maybe lockpicking procedures or disarming traps procedures. Of course, combat encounters will have a very codified, but we already expect that. Overland exploration, well explained with procedures. And then here's where people get divided, because there's one core aspect of role-playing games I haven't mentioned in this video, which is social stuff. But I expect a section of my game to also delve into some interesting ways with very well laid procedures to resolve social situations like haggling, for example, negotiating with someone, intimidating, or maybe some form of, and I know some people don't like this, but I do, some form of social combat. Social combat sounds ridiculous, but some form of social confrontation, where at the end, it's not really about who wins or who loses. It's more like, I want this, you want that. How much are we willing to compromise with one another? What am I willing to sacrifice to get what I want from you? And vice versa, which is similar to what they do in the Burning Wheel with the Duel of Wits system or subsystem or procedure, which is exactly what I just described, but with the rules for that system. So I guess that's it for this one. As I've mentioned at the end of most of my videos, I am limited by the amount of games that I have read or played. So if you know of a game that has a very cool procedure for something, I want to read it. The more I read, the more prepared I am for whatever I'm trying to do. I'm already writing this system, by the way. I'm already putting my thoughts onto paper, or more likely a digital sheet. But it's really not ready to be shown because it's just ramblings on a Google Sheet. All right, thank you for watching. You are awesome if you got this far. Please leave a comment if you think there's something relevant to say. See you in the next one. This is Elven Tower Adventures, and my name is Derek.